Welcome, everyone, and thank you for joining us today. What am I? What? We're not.
Wait till
Gee.
I'm live on air. That was a good practice.
Thank you, Mike. All right. Just cue me. Welcome, everyone, and thank you for joining us today for Truro Town Council's Committee of the Whole for Thursday, December the 19th, 2024. Before we begin our meeting, I would like to commence with a land acknowledgement. I, Kathy J. Henton, Mayor for the town of Truro, acknowledge we are Mi'kma'ki, the ancestral traditional lands of the Mi'kmaq people, where we live, work, and play. We acknowledge the peace and friendship treaties and recognize we are all treaty people. There are more than 50 African Nova Scotian communities throughout the region. African Nova Scotians for generations experienced inequalities due to systemic racism. Their distinct culture has greatly enriched our province for over 400 years, and we proudly celebrate their heritage and history. I would like to acknowledge that Councillor Talbot is unable to join us today as he is away on a family situation, and we're sending him our thoughts, and I will see him in the new year. The first item on our council agenda is the approval of today's agenda. Are there any additions, deletions, or changes to our agenda, Mr. Dolter?
No, Madam Mayor.
Thank you. If not, I'd call for a motion to approve the agenda. Thank you. Councillor Fleming made the motion and seconded by Councillor McGrath. Any discussion? Seeing no discussion, all in favor of approving the agenda for December 19th, please signify by saying aye. Aye. Contrary minded? The agenda is approved. Item number 2, the approval of the Committee of the Whole minutes from September the 26th meeting. If everyone has read their minutes, I would like to call for a motion to approve the minutes from September 26th. Would somebody be prepared to make that motion? Okay, Councillor Thomas, Deputy Mayor Thomas, excuse me. Seconded. Councillor McGrath, thank you very much. Any discussion? All in favor of approving the minutes for September 26th, please signify by saying aye. Aye. Thank you. Contrary minded? Minutes are approved. Moving along. Item number 3, application to FCM, Climate Ready Plans and Processes Fund. Mr. Dolter, could you give us an update of where we're going to go with this?
Yes, thank you, Madam Mayor. So Alison Grant, our Manager of Strategic Initiatives and Communication, she's going to just give a quick brief to Council on this. The reasons it's before Council today is just give an overview. Both items 3 and 4 are to get some direction from Council on moving forward for, in one case, a funding application, in both cases, funding just to get these processes moving along, as our public meeting is until 13th of January, so we do have to move some of this stuff forward. So, Alison, you want to just cover those items?
Sure. So on December 10th, we applied to the Federation of Canadian Municipalities Climate Ready Plans and Processes program, and this helps municipalities develop comprehensive climate adaptation strategies. So you're probably familiar with our Community Energy and Emissions Plan, which we just completed. That plan really looks at the town reducing their greenhouse gas emissions. A climate adaptation plan would look at preparing us for climate risk as we move forward. So things such as flooding risk, wildfire risks, invasive species risks, significant weather events, and those kind of things. And looking at to develop a strategy around that. So that's what we've applied for. The town has made an application requesting up to $70,000 to complete this report. We expect that the total cost would be around $100,000 to $110,000. So as part of that application, you do need to include a council resolution for that. So we will be looking for that on January 13th at the public meeting. So it would be a resolution to submit the application or to accompany the application that's already been submitted, and confirmation that forthcoming funds would be available.
So essentially, the recommendation is there in the briefing note that was given to Council, as well as what the proposed motion will come forward on during the January 13th meeting. So we just wanted Council to have the opportunity to ask any questions prior to bringing the resolution forward, and just if there's any questions of Alison at this time on the application itself.
Thank you, Mr. Dolter. Is there any questions for Council at this time? Deputy Mayor?
Thank you. So you can apply up to what percentage? Will they cover up to 70% or?
So it's up to 80%, but I shouldn't say that. It's up to 80% depending on certain criteria. So if you have a collaboration element, you can apply for an additional 10%. But so it's a maximum of up to 70% or $70,000. So we have applied for the maximum that we are allowed to.
Right, and the anticipation is to get the maximum, is it, or where we?
Yeah, assuming that our application is accepted on the parameters of that collaborative sort of nature. Colchester is also applying to do an adaptation strategy as well, so there will be an element of collaboration with them there. So assuming all those things are accepted, yeah, we've requested the full amount and have normally been successful.
Okay, so what's the case if we're not successful, or we're successful at 20% or 30%? Are these sort of things like either full funding or not funded? Is that how this works? Or-
Well, I think it's up to the 70,000, so they could approve a lesser amount, depending on, or they come back with questions on our application itself.
Right, so we can make that decision later.
Yeah, we can make the decision later. I mean, we assume in most cases when we've, I think in almost all cases, we've gotten the full amount of our funding request. So as long as we qualify, so they look at whether or not we qualify, and they come up with that. And then the projects and that will come out through the work that's going to be done through this process.
Right, it's my understanding you're not signing on the dotted line, we're just
Yeah.
giving approval to seek funding support.
Yeah, and we assume the timing on this will work well with our budget process as well, too. You can see that the implementation that's been laid out there with both summer and September and in March, that's all going to be in the upcoming fiscal year, not the current. So we'll be able to budget for this, and we should know prior to the budget deliberations whether or not we have to set aside the additional money to, probably some, $30,000 to $40,000 of our money in order to do the full implementation of the program.
Right, thank you for your response.
Thank you, Deputy Thomas. Councillor Graham?
I was just wondering if this is something that will be done in-house or contracted out?
Yeah, we would contract out the expertise of a consultant, much as we did for the Community Energy and Emissions Plan. There would be a staff working group sort of comprised to help sort of manage the project on our end.
Thank you, Councillor. Any further questions? Seeing none, thank you, Ms. Grant. Thank you. Okay, so at this point, at this juncture, it's coming to council in January.
Yes, correct, Madam Mayor. Yeah, it'll come in January in the agenda, and we'll have that resolution formulated for council's approval.
Thank you very much. Item 4, funding request for the Equity and Anti-Racism Plan. Mr. Dolter, please.
So again, this is an item that's come to council now. We need some consensus to move forward with this. The other partners in this, which would be Bible Hill, the county, and Stewiacke, have already approved their portion. Stewiacke included? I should have.
We haven't heard back from Stewiacke yet, but
Okay.
both the County of Colchester and Bible have confirmed.
have approved their portion. So again, this is something that council was aware of that we were looking at applying for. We have been, we've been successful as far as the contract goes and that. So again, our portion of that would be the proposal says there. All the council support the application, or sorry, this is, am I looking at the right one here? Sorry. The climate action, I think I got them. Actually, I got the same one twice. Just a second now. Apologize for that. I don't think I have the resolution there. It's for 20. I'll go to you. Go ahead. Sure. Sorry about that.
Yeah, so the total project costs we're looking at are between $72,000 and $80,000. So it's splitting that between the 4 municipalities. So we're looking for a commitment of $18,000 to $20,000 from the town of Truro.
And when do we need to hear back from Stewiacke? When's
Ideally, right away. We're hoping to get a response from them before sort of the holidays. The report is supposed to be accepted by council before April 1st. Okay. So we're sort of getting to a short deadline.
Or we'll probably reach out to them for a reminder if we don't hear something.
Yeah.
Okay, go.
So, Madam Mayor, all we need today really is consensus, because we do have to respond before the January meeting. So I just need consensus. We do have money available in the budget, and that we can cover this off. We just have to do a little bit of juggling at this point. So again, it shouldn't be an issue with the actual funding our portion of the money.
Councillor Graham?
Just for clarity, is this the position that has already gone out to tender?
So we have hired a equity, diversity, inclusion, and accessibility coordinator. That's Nikki Gillis, who started last month. So she'll be overseeing the work of this plan, but as a requirement of the Dismantling Racism and Hate Act, all municipalities and villages have to have an equity and anti-racism strategy in place by April 1st.
And the reason this is coming to council now is the requirement for the plan actually only came out in July. So we didn't budget for it. So now that's why we need to bring it to council now, because this is money that wasn't identified within our budget.
I remember that clearly, but just wondering, like, have we already put this position to tender?
No, this is a
unclear.
contract position where the equity, diversity, and inclusion coordinator, that's a three-year funded program. So she's a member of staff at this point between us and Bible Hill. This is a separate contract to put together the plan that's due on the 1st of April, which she will be involved in, but she's not. Her task is not to put that plan together. That she's doing the overall equity, diversity, and inclusion strategy for Bible Hill and the town as a separate item.
Thank you, Mr. Dolter. Councillor McGrath.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Mr. Dolter, just to clarify the April 1st deadline, is this another legislated by the province? Yes. So we have to be moving forward with some sort of plan, correct?
Yeah, we're supposed to have the plan fully completed, by that date. I imagine if we're slightly behind, but we certainly have to have it well underway by that, and have it, if we can, have it before council to meet that deadline.
Have it substantially complete.
Yeah, exactly.
Perfect. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. So we can't vote at this meeting, but I guess we are looking for a consensus.
We just need consensus that there be no issues with council. Again, we just need to get back to the other units to say that, yes, we're in, and, we've reviewed the budget, and we do have the funds available to cover the amount.
Councillors, is there any issues you're identifying as a concern, or do we have our consensus? We move forward with this. Any opposition? We're good? Excellent. Okay, terrific. You have that, Mr. Dolter? Okay. Now we're moving on. Item number 5, Public Works Presentation. So we're going to ask our director, Andrew McKinnon, to step forward to give us the big show.
You doing slides? Okay.
Whenever you're ready, Mr. McKinnon, mesmerize us. Yeah.
There we go. All right, I'll wait for the projector to fire up, but this is a council orientation of the Engineering and Public Works Department. I guess I gotta use the arrows. So Engineering and Public Works are responsible for safe and efficient operations of the town's public infrastructure. So our streets, our sidewalks, our sewer system, storm sewer systems, water treatment, water distribution, and our traffic lights and signs. For the safe and efficient operations of the infrastructure, we achieve this by using established standards of our operation maintenance performance practices, which is on our website, and it's a manual that we use, while also planning for sustainable capital infrastructure improvements, which we all will go through at budget time. So the department is led by myself as Director of Engineering Public Works. And within the department, we have a senior engineer who does the capital planning, performance standards, regulatory control, asphalt management, operations engineer who does the project design, operations, construction, stormwater management. So he's physically out with the construction crews on a daily basis. Senior engineering technician that does all the drafting, design work, field surveys, and asset management modeling, mapping and modeling. And an engineering assistant technician that also does drafting and asset management mapping and models. Office manager does the public inquiries, payroll management, project cost entry work. And then out in the field crews, in the non-union sector of our public works crews, we have an operations manager, 2 operational supervisors, and then 3 operational foremen. And this is how we look in a flow chart organization of all the positions that I just mentioned. And you'll see underneath supervisor for fleet, there's a head mechanic, and then 1 QP mechanic. The ones below the blue boxes are the unionized workforces that are members of QP. So in transportation, they have 18 members for the streets and the sidewalks. And then in the water and sewer, it's kind of a more regulated and detailed work. There's only 12 members, but it takes 2 foremen because of the certifications required for sewer and water work. So our operation maintenance, the managers, that's just a list of the titles and mentioned there, the 18 staff for the transportation, 12 for environment services, and they have the water distribution, sewer collection. The province regulates at what level your systems are certified at. So our water distribution is a level 2 system. A lot of small towns just have level 1 systems. Our sewer collection is a level 2 system. And our water treatment plant is a level 3 water treatment plant. And all of our operators at the plant have achieved level 4 certification. You're allowed to go 1 level above what your facility is certified at. I think we're the only plant in the province that has all level 4 operators. And we just hired a new person, and she's just at her level 1 at this point. So in transportation services, basically what we're responsible for there is 100 kilometers of roads, so street cleaning, asphalt patching, and all the snow and ice control, and all the other miscellaneous things that go along with all of that. 89 kilometers of sidewalks, which are all concrete, so a lot of concrete maintenance, capital construction of curbs and sidewalks, and the snow and ice control of the sidewalks. 11 sets of traffic lights now that we have a roundabout, with maintenance and operations, and over 600 traffic signs, which are a lot of maintenance and a lot of new installations. Environmental services, 112 kilometers of water mains, a lot of, over 1,100 main valves, hydrants, remote stations. So the remote stations are the pumping stations and PRV stations, and over 4,500 services, for every house and business in town, which all have a valve and a meter. 95 kilometers of sewer system with the manholes and sewer pump and lift stations, and the storm systems with 80 plus outfalls that go to ditches or brooks, and all the catch basins that are the inlet structures to get the water into the storm system. So all water and sewer infrastructure operated and maintained by staff with the certification, operator certifications, so ensuring everything's environmentally safe practices and procedures. The water system, for example, we have 6 different pressure zones within the system, regulated by pressure regulating valves between the different zones, and treated water reservoirs that require daily checks and SCADA monitoring, computerized SCADA control of the data. Water treatment, it's like I mentioned before, it's a class 3 conventional water treatment facility. Average daily production, I probably should check on these numbers. These are probably higher than what we are today. 14 megaliters per day, 3 million imperial gallons. We're probably down closer to 2 million imperial gallons per day now. But the plant is capable of 5 million gallons. That's the way it was designed and built in the early 90s. And our surface water reservoir, a man-made lake of damming the Leper Brook. Currently, you have to excuse me, I still like to talk in imperial. We're currently about 590 million imperial gallons in the reservoir, and before we raised the dam in the 90s, it was only 80 million gallons. So I always say, and anytime anybody's concerned that the water looks like it's getting low, I don't think we'll ever see the old high water mark again. So we never have to worry about volume of water. Leper Brook watersheds, 440 acres of wilderness that we try to maintain as wilderness to keep the watershed clean, and the staff in the water plant, they do raw water samples from different tributaries in the brooks in the watershed a couple times a year. And that's part of the water quality sampling that we do. That's on the raw water side, but in the system, there are 38 weekly water quality samples that we do. So these are sample locations throughout the distribution system. 21 of them are just for straight chlorine residual, being the most indicative and key component to make sure the water is clean everywhere. That's the one that we have the most sample locations for. And then there are 17 for other chemical and physical properties that are measured, 4 quarterly samples for longer-term metals and THMs, and quarterly raw water samples from the reservoir in the Brookson watershed. So the weekly sampling, that's all tested by independent labs, and in any of the results come to us, and if anything is of concern, it would also go to the Department of Environment. And here's just a sample of them. The highlighted one on the top is just the finished. These are 4-year-old numbers, but it just goes to show the manganese is the worst thing that gives us dirty water problems downtown, but we're consistently well below the limit of 0.5 with always getting values of 0.1. And then there's a couple that just show what we get for different locations in the system. Like one's at the Petrocan on Roby and one's the KC Concrete on Glenwood Drive. And then we've been doing lead results too, and they're always well below the acceptable levels. So organizational framework for Public Works, engineering office, we plan the budgets and programs for Public Works services, track our labor, equipment, material costs of our services, our municipal asset management planning and programs, which is getting more robust and more detailed with the new staffing that we have. We provide specifications for our tenders for equipment and materials, and we direct the field staffs within our guidelines of the non-union personnel policy. Public Works field staff, they direct the Public Works programs for our Public Works workforce. They use our operation and maintenance best practices and follow the guidelines of the QP collective agreement for all of their unionized employees. And that contract sets the parameters for grievance procedures, overtime distribution, how we're supposed to do the call-outs for all of our overtime events, and any progressive discipline procedures are all set out in the collective agreement. And follow along with the regulatory framework, of course, we have to follow federal, provincial, and our own bylaws. For federal, for instance, Department of Environment, they set the standards for our drinking water standards, and also the wastewater treatment standards, which is our town sewer bylaw. Federal Department of Fisheries, for any stream diversion permits, culvert permits, anytime we do anything near a brook, we have to make sure we're following the federal fisheries guidelines, which go through the provincial Department of Environment, but they're federal. And the Transportation Association Canada, which is a key one for our manual uniform traffic control devices, traffic calming guidelines, active transportation guidelines, any of the guidelines to do with how best to manage traffic, whether it's pedestrian, vehicular, or cyclists, are all in the TAC guidelines, Transportation Association Canada. And then Transport Canada, they are the ones that regulate the rail crossings and transportation dangerous good and fleet safety. And Transport Canada, they don't hesitate to give us orders or CN orders if they see issues at crossings. Provincially, there's department agencies we need to follow. Environment is kind of, the two on this page are the two biggest ones. Environment with the Clean Drinking Water Act, with the facilities regulations and our operator certifications. The drinking water regulations, they establish the minimum chlorine levels, and if we do have bacteria in our system, they put out the protocols for boil orders, advisories, which we would have to do. And Department of Labor, the Occupational Health and Safety Act and regulations. The two biggest ones, temporary workplace traffic control, which is just a huge impact on the costs of all of the tasks that we do on the roads. They're a little overboard on what needs to be on the roads, given that most of our traffic is driving 50 kilometers an hour or less. But the most important one is the trenching and confined space regulations. That's very crucial for the safety of our workers, because that's, you know, the most serious accidents can happen in a ditch. Provincial departments, again, Department of Public Works, Motor Vehicle Act, that sets out the standards that we have to follow for the traffic authority and traffic sign work. Fleet safety maintenance and fleet audits, the hours of work regulations that our drivers are allowed to work. We have to follow all these guidelines. Snow and ice, we're exempt, but at the same time, you still have to follow them, and if something happens, you want to make sure you have your logbooks in order, and even if there are exemptions for our hours. And workers' compensation boards for incident reporting and back-to-work accommodations. And our own bylaws. We have our own town safety program. Much of that exceeds what's stipulated in the Occupational Health and Safety Act, but that's just the best way to go to make sure you're being as safe as you can on the job. So we do pre-job hazard assessment forms. They're filled out every day, and as well as Nova Scotia overhead clearance reports. So the work crews, they do that themselves on a daily basis, every crew. And then as they work, there's the safe job procedures, the safe work practice, and incident reporting. And then any of our work that we do for our standards for servicing follow our own subdivision bylaw, and as well as reviewing developers' servicing. And then we have a sidewalk construction management policy, which is trying to make our capital budget a little more sustainable so that we don't overbuild the amount of sidewalks that we have in town for what's needed. And we have a local improvement bylaw that is for extension of services on existing streets, and sewer lateral responsibilities and fee structures for homeowners. And the sewer use bylaw sets the sewer effluent quality parameters to ensure treatment standards are achieved at the regional wastewater treatment facility. And our budget, we'll go through all this at budget time. Currently, our operation budget is $8.5 million of our $37.5 million budget, about 22%. And it's divided up into the categories that are regulated by the province. Our common services are our salaries and office building expenses. Transportation has the street and sidewalk operational items. Environmental health has their sewer and sewer treatment and solid waste in it. And then the capital budget is, you know, on a typical year, our road preservation tax that we just had created 6 or 7 years ago is now generating about $550,000 per year that's dedicated to asphalt overlays to preserve the streets before they fall apart and need to be totally rebuilt. But then when we do street rebuilds or any of our other capital works, we've pretty well relying on just the gas tax funding now, which can be anywhere from $900,000 to $1.5 million, depending on the year. And there's just the pie chart of where we are at the public works and environmental services are the light blue at the bottom, the 22%. And then the water utility is a separate town business from the rest of our budget. And the water rates are approved by the UARB. Our operational budget now is $4.7 million of the total $6.8 million of the water budget. Pumping treatment, $1.7 million. The distribution system is close to $1 million. That's for the maintenance of the mains and the hydrants, water meter reading, and any water breaks that occur. And then close to $1 million for admin and general, and depreciation and tax, another $1.3 million. And then the capital budget usually just balances out the books for the year, and it's based on what's required in a 5-year capital plan. And this year it was water main for Phillip Street, meter upgrades, and the spillway repairs that we needed to do. So for 5-year plan and infrastructure priorities, we have a 5-year asset management plan for streets and sidewalks, sewers, water mains, and a public works fleet. The asphalt management system was first implemented in '07, so it sets paving priorities in line with the asphalt conditions and expected traffic wear, which we relate to the street classification system. So whether it's a local street or whether it's an arterial road is kind of in line with the expected traffic wear. So those ratings are done using advanced total pave software, and then the traffic wear's value, it's weighted by the classification. So our new senior engineer and staff are working on a much larger asset management plan than what we've had in the past. So they're going to do a presentation in January before we start the budget process, so we can see how our new ratings are going to be done and how it's all going to be done with new GIS mapping, so everybody can see like the hot spots for streets and sidewalks and the water system and everything across town. So that'll be all out, mapped out, and we'll do a presentation New Year. So we'll have that all out ahead of time before we do the 5-year plans for each infrastructure, which we want to have done for budget time. So future priorities, some of these are old items that we've had on here before. You know, certainly continue focus on our infrastructure priorities from our asset management. That's the biggest one. At one time, we were looking at the Industrial Park Highway Access Project, you know, and back when we were looking at it 10 years ago, it was 30 million. So I think the roundabout itself is making good enough improvements in that area, but we also are still continuing with the upgrade of the traffic light controllers, and at one time we were looking at Lawrence Street realignment here, but we'll probably have other priorities now, especially coming out of the active transportation plan. So in closing, we have the street classification map, new street ratings, capital plan. Like I say, will be discussed during the budget deliberations with a presentation ahead of that. Asset management staff have been dedicated to developing the new asset management plans for our infrastructure, and they'll start with that presentation with council in the new year. That's the end of the presentation, so.
Thank you very much. It's just like a mini documentary.
Yeah.
Great information.
Yeah.
Appreciate that, Mr. McKinnon. Now, the anticipation of the questions from council. They're riveted. I'm going to start off with, looks like Councillor McGrath.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Thank you, Mr. McKinnon, for the presentation. Just a quick question when you were talking about the gas tax funding. With the move to electric vehicles, and especially with those being cheaper to operate generally, no tax or no gas rather, and the lack of replacement of brake pads. I know people have had EVs for 5-6 years still on the original pads. But these vehicles often tend to be much heavier than their gas counterparts. The weight would cause faster deterioration of the roads. What's our plan long-term for funding the road repairs once, theoretically, the gas tax dwindles?
I don't know what we're going to go beyond the gas tax funding. It depends on the sustainability of our whole budget system and our whole property taxation system. Well, if we could get some of our debts off the books, maybe we can start funding our own capital works and not have to rely on federal funding, but yeah, not sure.
I think, and as far as the feds go right now, I mean, I don't think they've even renamed it from gas tax.
Yeah.
Because they do realize that how things are changing and shifting. So, again, I think we can only go from federal government to federal government. I mean, the commitment is, and through FCM is, they have a commitment or they had a longer term commitment on that, but I think as government changes, we'll have to see where that goes. And the commitments to municipalities, because, I mean, that's where the original gas tax was committed to, and being a regular and established grant. So I think, should the government change over, we'll have to see if there's any changes made to the program, because it's certainly been expanded over the years. Because when it first came out, it was only for roads and that type of infrastructure, but it's been expanded to include recreation, a bunch of other things. So in the longer term, I guess we're going to have to see where it goes. And if the federal government changes after an election, again, that's, I think, we'll have to see where they're leaning and how if that's going to continue.
Okay, so neither of you are aware perhaps of any plans to, I don't know, charge a heavier registration fee for the heavier vehicles, or like a sliding scale based on weight that would then be distributed to municipalities, provincial or
I
federal?
haven't heard
No.
of anything.
Yeah, I haven't heard anything on that at all.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Councillor McGrath. Councillor Graham, did you have a question?
Yeah, I have two, actually. The first is our towns as,
Just a sec, it doesn't seem to want to, there we go.
am I good now?
I think you're good.
Our town's growing in leaps and bounds, as we all know. I really expect that there's probably going to be a pretty significant impact on your department. I'm wondering, as decision makers, what we should be considering and what we can expect, or what you anticipate your department might, how it might change and evolve given the new infrastructure that's going up around town.
As far as our underground systems goes, the capacity is fine. And as far as our street network goes, I think our capacity is fine. Our biggest issues are more the aging of our infrastructure and keeping up with reinvesting in the infrastructure, and maybe there's an opportunity to have some kind of taxation on the developers. I don't know, but it's mainly everything that we're looking after is a function of wear and aging, like the water pipes and the sewer pipes it's the wearing, the age of them, and the roads. You know, if we get more traffic, we get heavier vehicles, they might wear faster, but it'll probably still go in the same order that the arterials are gonna wear faster than the local streets and whatever. So it just, we can set the same kind of priorities, we just might have to do more of it each year, which is, then comes back to all of us and how we're gonna find the money to do more.
So we're looking at likely bigger budgets for your department as our town
It's
grows.
possible, but, yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
we're trying to get more efficient with what we do as well, so.
And if I could, the other issue is, one of the advantages of densification is what we're doing is we're not increasing our road network, we're not increasing our pipe network, we're going off what's already established in the ground. So, you know, as we expand into, you know, particularly going through William Barnhill, that's going to add some cost because we're going to add additional lengths of pipe and additional roadways.
Like our sewer system, for instance, since Crosley's have shut down and Polymer has really ramped down on their water usage and Stanfield's has really ramped down on their water usage, we're probably 1 million less gallons a year going through our sewer system. So we still have lots of capacity in our sewer system.
But I mean, each year when we go through and, you know, we look at the asset management and that, I mean, that's one of the things we'll come back to council with is if we need to grow or if we need new equipment in order to address some of the expansion. But so far, again, because we haven't created, we've densified as opposed to creating, you know, extensions of the town, and, you know, the industrial park isn't growing anymore. You know, we're in a fairly good position, but as we do expand into some of the more residential areas, there likely will be some additional costs that are going to be seen, right? So, but we'll, you know, we'll be able to forecast those as we're developing them.
I had a second question, if through you, Mayor. It's not necessarily regarding your presentation, but all councillors probably at this time of year are entertaining conversations about the overnight traffic or parking ban.
Oh, yes.
And I know that that is through your department, although it wasn't part of your presentation. I just thought this would be a good opportunity for you to address why we implement the parking ban from dates to dates, why we don't follow the model that's set in Halifax.
Unpredictability of our weather is the main factor, and Halifax really regrets that they went to the system they went to because they have an awful issue with parked cars on the streets when it does snow. Well, I didn't know it was going to snow, or I didn't see your notice. Our system is simple, it's easy to enforce, and when we do get surprise events, that makes it easy for us to plow the streets. It's there. The bylaw isn't there just because we don't want people parking on the streets in winter. It's there so that we can plow the streets and not have to worry about going around cars. And it works a lot better than the system that Halifax went to that they regret that they went to.
Just communicating comments that I've heard, talking about climate change and the reduced amount of weather events that we're experiencing, the duration of the parking ban seems to some to be excessive, and
It does to them, but the problem is, I heard this from somebody 10 years ago at a conference when they were talking about climate change. They said they should never call it global warming. They should have called it global weirdness, because it's the changing of weather patterns. It's more severe events, more frequency, more up and downs in the weather, which means we have to be prepared almost on a nightly basis that we might have to do something on the street. So they're more infrequent weather. We don't have a consistent snow from January through to March. It's, it could be raining one week and snowing the next. So it's.
if someone had additional questions, would they contact you directly, or is there someone else?
So they
on
can
staff?
contact me directly, yes.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Deputy Mayor Thomas.
Yeah, just,
You were
Little
on.
glitches, yeah.
densification, makes sense to me anyways, that densification should increase dollars for infrastructure, right? If you're densifying the number of taxpayers on any given street, essentially, you have more money to spend on
And they're
infrastructure.
making use of a system that already exists. We don't
Right.
have to look after new manholes and new sewer pipes. It's still looking after the same manholes and sewer pipes, just more volume in it.
Right. My question has to do with, some people, whatever, they live on local streets, streets that some of them haven't seen pavement in 40 years, they testify, and that seems like a long time. The streets are not in good condition. However, when it comes to asphalt condition, they're very low, but when it comes to traffic wear, they're very low as well, and so they tend to kind of drop off the radar. And I'm just wondering, this new asset management plan, do you think it'll help with that? Because there's people that, it's pretty rough roads. There's maybe only 4 or 5 people living on that dead-end street, but it's very bumpy,
Yep.
coming and going.
Some of them are, have a low rideability comfort level, but the condition isn't that bad, and they don't degrade very fast year to year because the little bit of traffic on them, and a local street can last 40, 50, 60 years.
Yeah, but there's quite a bit of frost action, and,
Yep.
I walked a lot of those
Yep.
streets at June election time, and some of those small little local streets, they're not in very good shape.
And it's that frost action that has gotten the attention of some of the local streets. We've done some streets. I remember it was Slack Street 15 years ago. We rebuilt that whole street, and it was mainly because there wasn't a good gravel base under it, and if you drove it in the late winter, early spring, it was just like moguls, the amount of frost action in it. So that got rebuilt for that, because of that factor. So we do factor in all of this. The only thing that's going to help some of the local streets get to the top of the list is more money, because we still, it's not that we favor doing an arterial street over a local street, it's just that we're trying to keep ahead of the game. And something that's going to break apart in 10 years, we need to pave every 10 years. If something's not going to break apart for 50 years, unfortunately, it has to wait 50 years.
Yeah, but Mr. McKinnon, it doesn't erase the fact that some of these very local streets, I'll term them as that, are in poor condition. There's not many of them, but they are around, so I'll leave it at that.
Yeah, but what you're saying is true, and we did notice this probably about 5 years ago that we weren't getting to enough local streets, so we tamed down the weighting factor of the arterial collector streets over top of the local streets. We kind of tamed that weighting down a bit, so that some of the local streets then did start coming to the top of the list.
Right.
So in the last, probably the first 10 years of the program, we really took care of a lot of arterial collector streets. We have great arterial collector streets in this town. There's probably just a few pockets that need work, like there's a section of Willow Street in bad shape today, but other than that, most of them are really good. And the last few years, we have been starting to get some local streets, so
Right.
the tide's kind of turning on that.
I mean, the citizens of this town should be very thankful or blessed because of the fact that we have just an excellent road system as far as when it comes to clearing of snow and, putting down salt, et cetera, that sort of thing. I mean, it's fantastic, really. So I'll end with that.
But we could always use more money on the streets.
Yeah.
Thank you very much, Deputy Mayor. Is there any further questions for Mr. McKinnon? No further questions? Thank you, Mr. McKinnon. For your
Certainly.
presentation was excellent. Thank you.
Thank you.
Moving on, item 6, strategic planning sessions in January. Mr. Dalter.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. So, in conjunction with, we've been talking a little bit in this meeting about the budget process and as we go into budget. One of the critical things that, I think that is important for any municipality to do is look at some of its longer-term strategic planning. We have, for the last, probably last 8 years or so, have followed a strategic priorities process where we set each year. And in looking at that, we feel it's probably time to sit down with council and go through a little bit more of a detailed process. So what we've done is we've looked at an outside consultant, and they actually came to us, and I think it's led by an individual that I think council is aware of, Mr. Jacques Dubé, who used to be the CAO for Halifax. He's done work in Moncton and a couple other areas, and Halifax itself as well, and areas in New Brunswick. So we asked him to put together a statement of work, and in January, and we have a tentative date now set for the 20th and 21st of January to get together with council to go through a strategic planning exercise. As part of that, we're going to do some of the basic stuff and look at values in that for that, which again, I think we've done some of that through the MPS process, discuss that, SWOT analysis for council, and look at kind of our vision and mission. But one of the really major tasks we want to come out of this is the 3 to 5 top priorities that council feels are important to tackle over the next year, and in fact over the next 4 years. And this is a process that obviously we can refresh each year as we go through. And looking at the active transportation governance, the health of the community, the prosperity of the community, those major issues. And then from that, we're going to look at drafting council strategic outcomes, and then from that, staff is going to look at some action plans to come back and present to council, so that we really have a document that staff are going to be involved in some of the latter part of the process, but Mr. Dubé can kind of take us through the process. So what we're proposing to council, and again, is a process that should take about 2 days to do, as identified the 20th and 21st of January right now, which is a Monday, Tuesday. We'll take council through that, and for that, it'll take about 20 hours of work for Mr. Dubé. So he's proposed a consulting fee, which we will put into the budget we'll plan to expend. Total cost once all is done is just over $6,000. Previous years we've spent, for a similar process of upwards of $10,000. So again, we feel this is a reasonable price, and we've reviewed Mr. Dubé's work and what he's offering to do, and we think it would be a good jumpstart for council, just to go through to refresh everything and give both council and staff some good guidance and understanding going into the budget process on really what we're trying to achieve. And do you think it would be a good exercise? I don't need a motion at this point. I just want council to be aware and just see if there's any concerns with us moving forward with that. And we'd be charging it off to our professional services budget. And again, we think that it would be, particularly with council looking at its next 4 years, we think it would be a good start to the term.
Thank you for that, and I too am very anxious to see what comes out of this, and sharing our good ideas and our vision for our top priorities coming up in the coming year. Councillor Graham, you have a question.
I do. It's a great idea, and I fully support the initiative, and I'm looking forward to it already. We're scheduled to meet. Much of the work we do at the municipal level is in partnership with our colleagues at the provincial and federal level. I wonder about our meeting with Dr. Steve Ellis scheduled for the 17th of January. I wonder, would it be beneficial to move that meeting until after we've set our priorities?
I think we could. I guess we just have to contact Dr. Ellis's office to see if he's available after that point, because I think he, if I'm,
I think he was only available till the 22nd.
I think he's only available, so we may have a short time frame there. He set that date of the 17th, so I don't know if it's flexible. We'd have to check to see if we could do it subsequent to our meeting. So if council would like us to look at, well, we can contact his office to see if we can change.
And then additionally, maybe post our planning session to schedule one with our local MLA as well, with the same purpose to communicate.
Yeah, we do have a meeting set with Mr. Dalton. I do have a meeting set with him on Monday.
Yeah, we're just going to have a quick conversation, but no, I do agree. One of the things as well, which I failed to mention, is that the idea is once we have this established, this is going to be a plan that we can share with our staff and we can share with the public as well too. So the intent would be to actually, we've kept the previous strategic priorities, we put them on the website, but this is going to be a document that we'll put together that council will have and, we can refer the public to going forward. So
Good
that,
idea.
as we're budgeting, we'll continue to refer back to this direction in order to make sure we're being consistent as we go year to year, that we're sticking to our strategy, right? As far as instead of, kind of going off in different directions and not getting everything done that we wanted to get done.
Yeah.
So we will we'll contact Dr. Ellis's office to see if there's any flexibility, and we'll let council know.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Thank you, Mr. Dalter, for that. No further questions on this topic. We're going to move along, and we're going now into item 7, the year in review. Mr. Dalter.
Yeah, we just brought this item. There was some discussion. I think council's aware. We did raise the issue of not actually doing a hard copy publication. I've been having discussion with the mayor on that, and she does feel that from her perspective, and I think some other councillors actually shared it as well, that they do appreciate the hard copy. It is expensive, and I guess I question, and maybe council's heard from constituents that they do read the document and value it. And I would like to be able to fiscally reduce the amount we spend to publish fewer of them, but I will also admit that I don't know how we'd actually figure out who needed the hard copies and who didn't. The one challenge we do face, I don't know where Canada Post is going to be in the next 2 months or so. I mean, I'd imagine things may get rocky there again. So we may have an issue actually doing the distribution on these if that does happen. But I just bring it forward. Is there general consensus that council wants the hard copy? It costs, just so be aware, it's about $8,000 a year to publish the year in review. We do put a lot of work into it. It's a great document. We like electronic documents because they don't require printing costs, but we do understand that some constituents may like a hard copy to read. So is council's wish that we do go with the full publication for this year, and then we can look at future years as we go into budget.
Thank you for that. You and I have discussed this in length, and I do like the document. I think a lot of people find it easier to read than to go on the internet, and some people don't have that option to do that. So it does provide good public engagement. It showcases what we're doing in the town, and also, for new residents to know their council and what we're doing, our accomplishments. And I think it's a very positive production and a great resource. As somebody told me the other day, they may not read it all at one time, but they know where it is in their home, they reference it, and they always enjoy reading it to get the information. Councillor McGrath, you've got your light on.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Just to second that, and I think you and I may have been talking to some of the same people because I've heard the same thing, that people reference it. I mean, I agree, environmentally it makes more sense to go with electronic documents, but a lot of people don't have that option or are not really still comfortable with that option. And I've heard from some of those folks as well, not necessarily on this topic, but just in general, they find having to go to the website difficult. We've got people who still come to town hall in person for things that could be done online, but they don't feel comfortable doing it online. So I agree. I think we should still do a physical publication. But yeah, Mr. Dolter, maybe we can look at how to identify who wants to opt out of the printed publication. I know a lot of the billing companies will do that, like, hey, receive your bill by email instead. And I don't know if that's something that we can implement as well. But I think, for those who want the physical copy available, I think it would be important for them to have that access.
Thank you, Councillor. Any further comments? Okay, seeing none. Well, we're coming to the end of our I see Allison. Okay, Councillor Graham.
I was just wondering if distribution could be incorporated into something like the tax bills that are being distributed anyway, or,
Well, it wouldn't save us any money because it's based on weight. So it's still, we'd pay extra for it anyway, so the postage is still there. And it is the cost of publishing as well, too. Mailing and the publishing, so, so we really wouldn't save anything by including it in another mail out. Yeah.
I support a physical copy, by the way.
Okay, this brings us now to the end of our agenda. I want to thank everyone today and our presenters, Mr. McKinnon, Ms. Grant, and I want to give a special shout out to Stephanie Rowe today, who keeps us in line and keeps us organized all year long. So, and she works very hard for us, and I just want you to know how much we appreciate you and all you do for us. On behalf of council, I want to wish everyone a very happy holiday season. We'll see you in the new year. Let's continue to be kind to each other and to our town. And the Committee of the Whole for December 19th is now adjourned at 4:55 p.m. Thank you, everyone.